turn then to item 3.3 on our agenda. This is a proposal from Supervisor Stone to form a new state, portions of California, and call it South California. And Mr. Stone, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, esteemed members of the board, fellow constituents. Will Rogers once said, "I don't make jokes. I just watch government and report the facts." I'm tired of California being the laughing stock of our country and the topic of late show talk hosts. In a fit of anger after I learned of the governor's signing of SB 89, I thought about the fiscal insults that local governments have had to bear over the past decade with a state that is dysfunctional, has an addiction to spending, and likes to balance their budgets on the back of hardworking citizens and on local governments. When I originally came up with this idea and came up with a draft new state, I never had the anticipation of seeing the incredible outpouring of support that I've seen not only from people within our county, but people within our state and people within our country. As we are sitting here on the dais, we are continuing to get emails as they're coming into this county one after another. We have a sampling of emails. This is not all of them. This is just sampling. 450 in support, 9 in opposition, 20 neutral. These emails have come from all over the state of California. This action was not made as a political stunt or a media statement. It was done on behalf of citizens that are taxed too much, businesses that are regulated too much and are fleeing the state, and politicians in Sacramento that care too little and are hamstrung by the special interest contributors to their war chests. For the past 3 years, we have all made tough sacrifices. We've seen our budgets cut by over 25%, making painful cuts to our core services to our valued constituents, and have been victims of state government balancing their budgets on the back of local governments and utopian revenue projections that will never come to fruition. I asked our staff to look at the past 5 years to see what the state of California has taken just from the county of Riverside that has seen our discretionary income cut by $200 million from the height of our income in 2007. And you will see over the past 5 years that we know for sure that the state has looted Riverside County to the tune of $166 million. This does not account for the circumvention of the state legislature to the initiative Prop 42, where the citizens of this state said, listen, if we are going to pay gas taxes at the pump, we want a nexus to road improvements to fix our crumbling roads and highways and fix our local roads. The state, in satisfying their spending addiction, changed that from a tax to a fee, and that is why we are witnessing the congestion that we have on our freeways and our crumbling infrastructure. While our friends and neighbors have lost or are losing their homes, their jobs, their marriages because of the tremendous stress that the economy has been placed on working families, the politicians in Sacramento continue to make one job-killing decision after another, yet begging for more taxes when our constituents are struggling just to put food on their plates. I'm calling on all the businesses in the state to join our effort in this fight. As a small business owner myself, I know how hard it is to make a buck today. Why should your hard work fund professional politicians in Sacramento. Riverside County may take the lead, as we have done before. We're ready to stand up for the hundreds of thousands of citizens in our county and our state that are hurting because of government actions and inactions and failed policies. We are willing to stand up for small businesses and large businesses that are fleeing the state in record numbers. And we are ready to advocate for either one state that must change directions immediately or create a new state with a part-time legislature that requires politicians to live and work in the economy they create for Californians to have the quality of life that we've been struggling to pay for many years. My friends, the bottom line is this. I am a native third-generation Californian. I was born in Los Angeles. I, like many, have not given up restoring California to its golden zeal. But it will take courage and conviction by inclusion, not exclusion. Gil Duran, a spokesperson for Jerry Brown, who after 15 to 20 minutes after my initial press release on this agenda item responded. It got to the governor's office that fast. His comments exemplify our present governor's disregard for the people that may not agree with him. To quote, referring to our county, "If you want to live in a Republican state with very conservative right-wing laws, then there is a place called Arizona. This is the same attitude that is driving our businesses out of our once golden state. I regret a governor of the state would allow such an outrageous statement. After all, the governor represents each and every citizen in this state, no matter what race, color, creed, or political affiliation. When I drew these draft lines, creating partisan lines was not the intent. Preserving and attracting jobs was my first interest. Jobs are a nonpartisan issue. We are ranked last of the 50 states in business friendliness. If we do not reverse these trends in business fleeing our state, and if we continue to be the state with the greatest number of welfare recipients, our existing state will become an officially failed state, leaving us with a third world economy and a welfare state. Thomas Jefferson, one of the authors of the Declaration of Independence, said, "When any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, it is the right of people to alter or abolish it and institute a new government," unquote. We must reserve this option if all other remedies fail. Also, another quote. This one is from John F. Kennedy. "The men who create power make an indispensable contribution to the nation's greatness, but the men who question power make a contribution just as indispensable, especially when that questioning is disinterested, for they determine whether we use power or power uses us." Members of the board, my original recommendation is going to be modified because of the incredible response. I believe that these emails are a humbling representation of the anger and the frustration felt by citizens in what would be called the liberal counties of the state of California and the conservative counties. I have emails from people from San Francisco that say, we're liberal, but we don't like the way the state's being run, and we fear that our jobs are leaving the state. In my staff report, I just give a small list of the businesses that are either leaving the state or have already left the state. The last aerospace company, Northrop Grumman, where California was once the home and the beginnings of aerospace, is leaving the state. Aerospace is gone. Automobile manufacturing was prevalent in the state of California. Delco Batteries, making batteries for GM in Anaheim, where I was raised, is gone. Toyota Motors has a manufacturing plant in Fremont, California, employing 4,700 people. They're leaving the state. Nissan, their international headquarters in the United States was in Los Angeles. They've left the state. So we've chased out aerospace. We've chased out the automobile manufacturers. The one industry that's really been keeping California alive, our economy, has been tech. But tech now is vacating the state. You'll notice that Yahoo, and by the way, trending now on Yahoo for the past 2 hours, nationwide, or internationally for that matter, has been consideration of a 51st state. That's the issue that's being electronically communicated through their website. Companies like Facebook, companies like Google, companies like Dell Computers, they're all either moving out of state or they are expanding out of state. JCPenney Call Center, Hilton Hotels, headquartered out of Beverly Hills for years. I think they've moved to South Carolina. Pixel Magic out of Hollywood. Hollywood is moving a lot of their filming outside the state of California. Buck Knives, one of the oldest companies in San Diego, moved after being in San Diego for 50 years. Dunn Edwards Paints, been in Los Angeles County for over 100 years. Finally got fed up with all the carbon emission regulations, SB 375, AB 32, moved 1,000 jobs out of our state. As a result of these thousands of jobs leaving our state, those citizens that are waiting for this economic cycle to turn are in for a very big disappointment, because when the economy stabilizes in this country, the existing state of California will be at a net loss of thousands of jobs. It's been estimated that businesses can relocate to states like Texas and save 20 to 40% on their operating costs. Just to summarize, my staff report goes into the excessive and duplicative regulations that make business unlikely in our state. The overtaxation, we have the most taxed citizens in the country in the state of California. Welfare reform. We have 32% of the nation's welfare in our state that has 12% of the population. We spend more money in this state in incarcerating people in our state penitentiaries than we spend on higher education. That's an appalling statistic. And we have a governor that refuses to discuss pension reform that can save this state hundreds of billions of dollars. Pension reforms that this board has unanimously supported to keep our county fiscally solvent. And of course, the issue of illegal immigration. I'm a very strong proponent of legal immigration, but we are forced to spend significant taxpayer money, not just within the county of Riverside, but throughout the state of California, on medical services, education, incarcerating illegal immigrants in our jails at significant expense, and giving welfare to those that aren't even legal residents of this state. What I would like to accomplish in this moment when we've really caught the attention of the citizens of California, again, irrespective of your political affiliation, the common denominator is that we are all Californians, and we all want a golden state again, one that we can be proud of, one that unleashes the entrepreneurial spirit of Californians in creating jobs and reducing regulations and getting government out of the way and having good public safety and having good quality of life. We all want clean water. We all want clean air. I agree. But we have such onerous regulations that is an overkill that businesses just cannot survive here. So what I'm proposing is this. I am proposing for the first time to bring cities and counties in the state of California under one roof at the same time, and to share in our common denominator, our dysfunctional state and the horrific impacts that the state has created for local governments. Some local governments that may not even survive this budget cycle. Some local governments in the city or in a county that may go bankrupt because of this grabbing of local revenue. I'd like to have this local government summit in Riverside. Invite the mayor of each city in the state of California. Invite the chairman of the boards of supervisors. They're welcome to bring their fellow council members in respective cities, their board members in respective counties, and to discuss one option of trying to make the Golden State golden again and coming up with a plan to straighten out this dysfunctional state. Some of the discussions might include convening a constitutional convention in this state, because right now the way the state is being governed, as big as the state is and as diverse as it is, it's proving itself to be ungovernable. Or two, enact some type of initiatives that would ensure that we have a balanced budget amendment to our Constitution that may seriously finally look at the state having a part-time legislature, not creating the highest paid legislative jobs, state legislative jobs in the country. Because you have many people that are serving in the state legislature that have never had a job that pays this kind of money, and their decisions are being made by the special interests that are ensuring their stability of keeping those jobs, rather than looking out for the best interests of the citizens of this state. Texas is a great example of a well-run state that has created jobs, that exists with a part-time legislature, that does have the death penalty, doesn't stop the death penalty because a critical ingredient of barbiturate may have expired. What kind of side effects are we going to experience with an expired barbiturate? Probably no side effects. And addresses illegal immigration the way the state of Texas does as well. And then lastly, if we cannot come to a consensus in convening all these local government officials to come up with a solution to fix this broken state, then I'd like to keep on the agenda the idea of secession that has garnered thousands of emails, many interviews with public entities, radio, television throughout the state and throughout the country. We have hit a nerve with citizens that are just fed up with business as usual in the state, many of whom are fed up with the business as usual in Washington as we see the challenges there of taxation and increasing the debt limit. The citizens are engaged, and this is our opportunity as a collective body to lead an effort to reform a state that is going to fall into the abyss of failure if we don't act and lead. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. Before we turn to the audience, and we have about a dozen speaker cards here, I want to give Supervisor Tavoloni a chance to speak. He has to leave shortly to catch a plane. And Supervisor Tavoloni, of course, has represented us for a long time on the County Supervisors Association and is currently their president. Supervisor Tavoloni.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me just start by saying I commend Supervisor Stone for a quite out of the box thinking. His courage to put something like this on the agenda to generate discussion across the state is extremely commendable and encourageable. I mean, he has created a lot of courage and excitement around the state. It is a huge task to create a new state. Obviously, it's not going to happen easy, and who knows, it may not happen in our life, some of us, our lifetimes. But on the other hand, there's no doubt whatsoever that there needs to be change. Similar to what Supervisor Stone said in terms of the frustration at the state level with the state legislature, the frustration among members of CSAC, all 58 county members, the frustration among members of the League of Cities, especially these last couple of weeks with SB 89. There's no doubt whatsoever that something needs to change up in Sacramento. The partisan politics that we have seen, in my view, is the worst of the worst at the current time up in Sacramento, and it's basically Sacramento has stalled. You cannot get things done in the appropriate way, and it's definitely led by very special interest groups. And so the process that Supervisor Stone is proposing to at least to create discussion, to have a forum for discussion, I think is a good one. I don't necessarily support the idea of secession at this point, succeeding from the state of California. There will probably be a time when that should occur, but I definitely support the thought that there needs to be a forum to bring people, not just city council members and their mayors and county supervisors and their chairpersons, but the public together to talk about what is wrong in California. We see it every single day. We see it every single day. But yet nothing is being done. California Forward, the Silicon Valley Group as well, there are organizations that are doing their best to try to bring this all together, but it's going to take us, I think, as elected officials and the public to say enough is enough and change it. So I commend your idea. I wasn't going to support the idea of just bringing together Supervisor Stone, and I apologize, I do have to go catch a plane in Los Angeles. But in bringing together just the 13 counties, because I think there needs to be a lot more work. I
included all counties, Supervisor.
I know, and that's why I say I wasn't going to support that motion. I can support, and I think I'm glad you changed it, that we bring everybody together under the proper form. I would only ask that in doing so, this is a huge task that we also have our own house to keep in order here at the County of Riverside, that we not take the focus, that this not disrupt us from the focus of getting our own house in order, because we still have a lot of things to do here in Riverside County to deal with our own issues. So while it's nice that your proposal is to take the lead to try to create this forum, I hope that you will get the help necessary to help bring this to some level of logical and strong discussion, but also in a relatively expeditious way.
Supervisor, I will certainly be looking for your wisdom and leadership with CSAC, and I'll be working with Dave Wallman with the California League. And just to let you know, my goal is that this doesn't cost the taxpayers anything. I'm looking for sponsorships for this. I've been working on getting the convention center at no cost to the county, and we'll utilize my staff as much as we possibly can to help organize this in such a way that we also allow the public to give their testimony as well. So I see only good, positive things coming out of this meeting.
I agree, and I would strongly recommend your office contact California Forward, Jim Meyer from California Forward.
Thank you.
Any other board comments before we go to the audience? Supervisor Benoit, did you want to comment?
Let's just hear the folks.
All right, then we'll open up at the audience. I'll call on first Jeff Comachero, and he'll be followed by Mike Nagar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate being here this morning. Mr. Stone, you and I talked when you first issued that press release, and as you know, at first I said, what are you, crazy? But as I read more into what you were trying to do and realized what the underpinnings were of what you were trying to accomplish, I think you hit the nail right on the head. And I don't know if secession and a new state is the way to go, but I know we have an awful lot of problems that we need to solve. and those problems aren't going to get solved until everybody who's like-minded gets together and works to reform that. In our history, that's the way reform always occurs. Certainly those discussions are not going on in Sacramento, so they need to go on outside of Sacramento. But I would say that when I read your statements, something possessed me to write down a document. Maybe I had Thomas Jefferson and John Hancock on my mind. But I called the document the South California Declaration of Self-Governance. And, Mr. Chairman, I might go a little bit over. If you'll indulge me, I'd like to read this. And it's dated July 4th, 2011. The state of California in its current configuration has failed and disenfranchised many of its citizens. Since its formation, the state has grown progressively fractured. What was once a powerful and wealthy state is now fraught with insurmountable economic, social, and political weakness and discord. Many repeated significant efforts to resolve these matters have been made, and still we are experiencing a deepening of these ills to the extent that there exist serious threats to our residents, our prosperity, and the quality of life that all Americans aspire to achieve. American history teaches us and supports the right, and in fact the duty of its citizens to separate from such oppressive and ineffectual government and to replace it with a democratic system that is more closely aligned with the residents it represents. It is the right of all California citizens to be governed by elected representatives whose first allegiance is to their welfare. Many Californians do not enjoy that right, having seen it replaced with self-serving political partisan chicanery. Spending is out of control, and the legislature continues to approve shameful budgets year after year with no regard to available revenues. Recent events have brought this to the fore as the governor and state legislature demonstrated their comfort with using revengeful tactics to severely punish certain southwest Riverside County cities merely because their elected representatives dared to fight for their interests. Specifically, the new city of Wildomar may likely have to dissolve due to the wanton disregard of their welfare by the governor. The needs, objectives, and desires of the cities and counties of Northern California and the Central Coastal region are vastly different from the more than 13 million people inhabiting the 13 counties of the South and Inland Central regions. Yet the 25 million people of the North and Central Coast continually are able to impose their will on the remainder of the state. Therefore, we, the undersigned elected representatives of the 13 million misrepresented citizens of California, ask and are determined to separate from the existing state configuration and form the new state of South California. We trust and pray that the process of separation begin and proceed in an orderly and expeditious manner, and that all Americans are permitted to retain and preserve their rights, liberties, and pursuits as guaranteed by the Constitution of the United States of America. Obviously, this is not an executed document. It's merely my words. Yes, Mr. Supervisor.
So you're on the City Council of the City of Temecula, is that right? Okay. You didn't make that. I just think everybody should know that.
Thank you. I'm here representing myself this morning, but yes, and in fact, I'd be able to say, at least on behalf of certain members of my city council, if not all, and obviously we'd have to poll them, but the city would be happy to support Mr. Stone. Obviously, again, that has to happen in an open meeting, but personally, I pledge my support to you, and if there's anything the city of Temecula or I can do on your behalf, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next is Mr. Nagar. Good morning. He'll be followed by Doug McAllister.
Good morning, honorable members of board and staff. My name is Mike Nagar. Today I speak to you as a member of the Temecula City Council, a proud member for 12 years. I also speak to you as a private citizen and a small business owner. I support Supervisor Stone in his efforts to have this discussion. This discussion has to take place. It is true the state is no longer governable. I think I can say without hyperbole that thousands, tens of thousands are no longer represented. I can stand here before you and tell you that I am not represented in Sacramento. Oh, sure, we go through the motions of electing a representative and sending him up to Sacramento, but in truth, he has no voice and no say. And literally what is occurring in Sacramento is no less, and again with no hyperbole, anything less than taxation without representation. It does not matter one hoot what my representative says up in Sacramento. Let me give you a few examples of this taxation without representation. much of this you'll be familiar with. The state, by passing their recent budget, has decided to kill and raid our RDA treasury. Well, think about this. Not only are they killing the golden goose of jobs, which is pretty much the only economic engine cities have today to keep running, but they also have stolen the tax increment which we have created, which our ingenuity has created. They didn't just say, look, we're going to go take the tax that was 15 or 20 years ago. We're going to take that money, which you've generated over that time, and use it for our benefit, and at the same time kill the goose that's laying the golden eggs, and we'll just kick the can down the road and deal with this later. That's one example. Recently, or through this budget, they've taken the VLS, which is going to impact certain cities. Literally, it's going to drive some cities either to dissolve or to some form of bankruptcy. They've raided the Treasury, and in response to raiding the Treasury, what they've said is, too bad, die. That's what they've said. We're not going to die. And this idea that the governor, and I hold the governor responsible for what his press secretary says if you don't like it, go to California. I got news for you, Governor. I'm not moving to Arizona, and that is a totally disrespectful thing to say, and I would expect that the governor himself issue an apology. Item number, or in relation to VLF, we have cities who have to hire lobbyists now. Are we not represented? Is that not proof that we're not represented, that we have to hire a lobbyist to go talk to Democratic representatives of the Democratic Party and say, please, don't let us die? I'm sorry, it just doesn't work that way. It is further testimony that this state has become ungovernable. Let me bring it a little closer to home, and I hesitate to do this, but I think I have to make the point. Last year, my wife and I, as small business owners, through our personal income tax return, wrote the Franchise Tax Board a check for $35,000. That was our share. That's what we had to pay, and you know what? We gladly pay it. Don't want to avoid paying my taxes. At the same time, I'm trying to put my 18-year-old daughter through college, and I have a special needs son at home. You know what? Illegal aliens get more benefits than I do. Illegal aliens get free education. Illegal aliens get the free medical care. Mike. For the $35,000, I know I'm over, and I will sum up. For the amount of money that I'm paying over a 2-year period, I can pay for the medical care my son needs, and also put my daughter through 4 years of college. It's not equitable, and it's not fair. Now I'm going to summarize. First of all, I am speaking in my capacity as a Temecula City Council member. My colleague Jeff Comachero is here. If the board decides to go in this direction, and I hope you do, we will agendize something for the Temecula City Council agenda to help foot some of the costs of having this affair. I'm thinking $10,000. We'll see what the council wants to do. Lastly, and I'll sum this up, Supervisor, you've been gracious to let me go over, is you really have to try hard. You really have to be an idiot to screw up the state of California. Okay? This is the most prosperous state in the union with everything you'd ever want to succeed. How it got screwed up to this point is absolutely ridiculous. And I thank you.
Thanks. Now Doug McAllister, and he'll be followed by Paul Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Buster and Supervisors. I am here. I'm Doug McAllister. I am the senior member of the Murrieta City Council, although I'm not here officially representing them here today. I'm here on my own behalf. I want to point out that something that we all know is that the way our country was put together, that government is from the bottom up, and the protection of our rights is from the top down. But rather than protection, the state has purposely assaulted us over and over and over again. Here's some examples. After their decades long of spending addiction, they've taken away the RDA. As the previous speaker spoke, that was the golden goose for the jobs that we created with our own ingenuity in this region. They've gone after the VLF, which was bad enough for established cities, but will potentially kill the new cities. And the cavalier attitude towards that consequence is just appalling and speaks to a bigger problem. Speaking of those cities, it's not just the 4 cities that they're after. The Speaker has a bill right now for the purpose of forcibly disincorporating the revenue-rich city of Vernon. We can go on and on and on to show the examples of what Sacramento was trying to do, not just with the budget and not just about RDA and not just about BLF. Those are symptoms. The issue we have here at this point is that it's an ongoing assault to local government, to centralize government in Sacramento as much as possible. This is what the trending is showing us at this point. And our response to Mr. Stone's idea, I've seen two basic responses. The one is, wow, 51st state, what an idea. Out of the box. Let's have a look at it. But the other response I've heard is, no, that's foolish. That's foolish. What we should do is work together to come up with solutions that don't rock the boat. California has been called the quintessential land of fruits and nuts. For only here would we think that continuing to do the same thing over and over, expecting a different result, is considered wisdom. We may even hear that short-sighted sentiment here today. I hope not, but we may well. And I am here to encourage you, as a citizen of Riverside County and a proud citizen of the state of California, ignore it. Think otherwise. The state has failed us. Government is from the bottom up. We now look to you, the county. The question is not primarily, should we form a 51st state, though it's a very intriguing idea, especially since the administration's comments have made it very clear that they already consider us two separate states. The question we have here today is, should we have the conversation? And the answer is yes. We should at least have that conversation. I'm here to ask the county to be the clearinghouse of ideas, to look for a solution with every idea on the table, including the possibility of a 51st state. If there was ever enough energy for the right idea at the right time, it's now. And we just need to identify the right idea. And I think it's time to remind the state that power flows up from the bottom. It's time that the sleeping giant of local government wake up. And I think it's time for the county with the biggest target on its back to lead the way. I ask you, the Board of Supervisors, to take that lead, and let's have that conversation. Let's have the summit, and let's find a way to solve this problem called California. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. McAllister. Hope some money flows up, too, from your city to help us out. Okay. Mr. Jacobs, and then he'll be followed by Julie Waltz.
Good morning, Chairman Buster, members of the board, and fellow citizens. My name is Paul Jacobs. I'm a 15-year resident of Temecula. Supervisor Stone, I fully embrace one provision of your recommendation today, but before you take taxpayers down this rabbit hole of secession, with the expense involved in exploring the formation of South California, I ask one thing of you and this board. Immediately reduce the compensation county supervisors receive from your current $130,000 per year salary to the $600 per month you propose for the new South California legislature. Surely, if you believe the politicians representing a new state should be compensated so meagerly, you will be willing to put your money where your mouth is and reduce your salaries accordingly. I also suggest this board divest itself from the state pension fund. As a former state employee, I paid into my pension fund and earned my retirement by providing direct care to developmentally disabled individuals for 30 years. I did my civil service job for decades and challenge you politicians to act as good public servants by ridding yourselves of your fat salaries, whether or not you pass this ridiculous proposal to split the state. By the way, my state retirement was based on a 2% formula agreed upon by my bargaining unit. I understand Riverside County's retirement formula is based on a more generous 3% formula. So I suggest this board first look in the mirror before ever calling Sacramento a black hole again. Supervisor Stone, I applaud your leadership with an expectation that you and your colleagues will walk the talk and make a motion to reduce your salaries to $600 per month effective August 1st, 2011. Thank you for that part of your proposal and for the anticipated bold action the board will take today. Have a good morning.
Next is, please, we can get through this a lot quicker if we don't have any expressions one side or the other. Ms. Waltz, Julie Waltz, and she wanted 6 minutes, as someone donated. Rebecca Lodig donated 3 minutes to your time, and you'll be followed by Robert Melch.
Good morning. I haven't seen you guys since the ramrodding of Ordinance 884. Well, I'm here today to talk about the state of California. I mean, I'm kind of shocked that it took you guys this long to realize, Mr. Stone, that the state of California is dysfunctional. It's been that way for years. And you wanted to run, you ran for California State Senate. Did you think you would achieve anything by going up there?
Obviously, yes.
I just don't want the taxpayers to have to pay for any of this. If you're going to do this, you also have special interest groups. Maybe they could afford to back you. I mean, I'm not for this and I'm not against it because I know what the state is and I know it's in a very bad way. But I don't think we need to be greedy and take, I mean, there's a lot of money being funneled in different positions, and we don't really need a lot of these jobs that we have in the state. And I hope you're not doing this to further your political career. Because as you all know, a once famous president also said, I believe it was Abraham Lincoln, what kills a skunk is the publicity it gives itself. Thank you.
Mr. Melch, and he'll be followed by Brent Austin.
Interesting observation. Hardly know where to begin in the mere 3 minutes I'm allotted here, but let me make some critical points. And obviously, I will start out with my bias. I am a Democrat, I am a liberal, and I'm a political science instructor. That give you some clues? First of all, when I read about Mr. Stone's proposal, I agreed with the Press Enterprise and Supervisor Buster that it was insane. Basically, and I think I would applaud Mr. Stone for this, he has toned things down a bit. But from my perspective, I still see a strong ideological bias in his causation. All of the charges he made in his extended rant about the problems here in California, all of which, if I had the same amount of time, I could refute, basically looking at, where we are in terms of our economy and seeing the basis for that in Wall Street. I see that there is gridlock in Sacramento. Is it fair to blame Governor Brown, who's only been in office for 6 months? We did have an election last year, and he was elected. So we're a majority, in fact, a complete Democratic landslide. That indicated something in terms of the people's perspective. Now, with regard to moving forward to the future, if he could take off his ideological blinders, which scare the hell out of me, I hear about some people of his persuasion who believe that, for example, black people fared better or their families were more stable under slavery than they are under the current president. This is worrisome. So if he takes off these blinders and has an honest discussion, or might I suggest he look to the state constitution, and there are provisions there for establishing a state constitutional convention. I don't believe we've had one since 1879. It's been a long time. So I would agree with that proposal. And I would say that we have a discussion. I think ever since 1978, when Prop 13 was passed, to pardon the expression, I think local government has been screwed. So perhaps we might start thinking about, some sane remedies to this. First, have your meeting, convene a convention, and look positively and take off the ideological blinders. Maybe start with a repeal of Prop 13. Thank you.
After Mr. Austin, thanks, Mr. Melch. After Mr. Austin will be Robert Mabee.
You all have this here?
Please, you've got 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Good morning, Supervisors. And Mr. Stone, I don't see any blinders on you. Do you?
Thank you.
Who we are. I am Brent Austin with the Civilian Disaster and Emergency Rescue Corps, a California unincorporated nonprofit association here in Riverside. We are a self-supporting, non-governmental organization. I have been requested to represent hundreds of local legal citizen voters and hundreds of more distributed across the state of California. In principle, we are in favor of Riverside County Board of Supervisors member Jeff Stone's proposal for the 13 counties to secede from the state of California. We are a grassroots organization leaning heavily toward our U.S. Constitution as conservative patriots, endeavoring to teach our citizens how to survive any disaster, whether natural, man-made, terrorist, economic, and or political. Our philosophy with respect to the proposal. We agree with the basic premises stipulated in Supervisor Stone's proposal. However, in addition to recognizing Mr. Stone's financial, logistical, political, and educational concerns, we must add that a part-time legislature should have limited term limits and that any new government that we the people create will be regulated by we the people. We will not allow the government to maintain that it is our master and that we are their slaves. As our 16th President Abraham Lincoln so eloquently defined, we are a nation of the people, by the people, and for the people. And as President Harry Truman adamantly declared, the buck stops here. What we are willing to do. We are ready, willing, and able to work with Mr. Stone and others who are ready to start together, to begin the constitutional process to secede, to create a new and better state without the corruption, graft, greed, and despotic totalitarianism that is currently forcing us into poverty and total subjugation. We appreciate Supervisor Stone's proposal and desire that you other supervisors support his proposal. I don't know why anyone would be afraid and shy away from creating a new state. That's how we created 50 states so far. Respectfully, Brent A. Austin, natural-born citizen and conservative voter of the United States of America.
Next is Robert Mabee, and he'll be followed by Gary Grant. And our last speaker is Stephen Rush.
Good morning, Robert Mabee speaking. I can see why Mr. Stone would like to secede from the state of California and start his new state. On Friday, July 1st, 2011, the newspaper Channel 9 ran a story about a county official who wants to break away from the state and create a new state. This is the same man who skimmed off nearly $400,000 of campaign money to his sister, along with a county car, and who wants to ration bathroom paper to county employees. The same man who in 1999, when he was mayor of Temecula and a pharmacist, agreed to a settlement with the State Board of Pharmacy over 20 accusations they had made that he had operated an unlicensed pharmacy, improperly labeled drugs, and committed dishonesty, fraud, deceit, and corruption. Under the settlement, he admitted to 4 of the charges, all of them minor, and reimbursed the Pharmacy Board and State Attorney General's office a total of $10,000 for the cost of the investigation. This is the same man who the Press Enterprise Friday, June 10th, 2011, reportedly paid a $16,000 fine by the State Fair Political Practice Commission. This is the same man who I believe Supervisor Busters reported in the Press Enterprise Friday, July 1st, 2011, called crazy and out in the sun too long. This sick puppy, also known as Supervisor Jeff Stone, appears to have broken away from the state of reality. I have one document for the clerk of the board, a letter to the Attorney General along with documentation from Kevin Jeffries, State Assembly Member, 66th District, asking for an investigation. A man who has served the people well and who deserves the good reputation that he enjoys as the people's representative for the 66th District. One of the documents he gave to the Attorney General was Supervisor Ashley's report to the board on 4/12/2011 in Agenda 330, describing in detail the fraud committed by the county in Supervisor Stone's district, which Stone has continued to cover up to this day. Mr. Stone, are you going to name your new state the state of stupidity? If so, you are well qualified to be governor, and I applaud you for that, and I think you'd fit in real good. You have my vote. I think that you are the poster boy of corruption. You're the last person in the world to criticize the governor, who I didn't vote for, and to criticize the assembly. You're corrupt from top to bottom. Everybody on this board knows it, and I hope that you get 4 votes, including your own vote, against your agenda. Thank you.
Next is Gary Grant, and then Stephen Rush.
Good morning. A lot of happy faces around. I think I've heard a lot today that I wish I hadn't heard, but I've known it for a long time. The problem here today, I'll put it in a nutshell because I've only got 3 minutes. Development versus we the people. That's the subject. Greed is the other part of it. Seceding from the state would be paramount to breaking away from the very foundation the United States was based on. It is my belief that this idea is being used for publicity purposes of recognition to a political ambition, a future career, and should be removed from the agenda. The beliefs that you are going to throw away what was created just over 200 years ago because you're not going to admit to the truth. And it appears to me that there's a lot of pots calling the kettle black. Since I came to this county, it's been exactly the same situation as if I was fighting California, Sacramento, which I had to go up there several times to achieve what I wanted to do here, and I achieved it. But we, the people, have to become united, and that's the unfortunate thing about we, the people. We're not united, we're divided, and greed is a paramount. And the other issue is master charge. The indebtedness that's been created by the people of greed has gone beyond belief. And if you don't believe me, look at the national news once in a while. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Grant. And Mr. Rush.
Good morning, Supervisors. I've been a lifetime resident of the Inland Empire, born and raised in Riverside, and currently reside in Redlands. Supervisor Stone's proposal has merit. However, the issues of excessive regulation, overtaxation, full-time legislator, and immigration, those are partisan political ideologies. For example, deregulation as opposed to overregulation. And to some degree, I can agree with pension reform and education reform, but how we go about that process is another issue. I definitely agree with the components of the proposal that speak to the need for automation and emerging technology. However, these are not reasons enough for secession. However, what is if harm has been created that goes beyond partisan ideology, such as taking taxes and license fees from Southern California's cities, counties, and their people to spend on less needy northern programs, such as bankrupting the 4 cities that were mentioned earlier. This is what is known as a First Amendment issue. Okay, the constitutional right that grievances be brought forth before the government and therefore be addressed accordingly. When these issues are not addressed, they become problematic for those who have to live under them. I am a descendant of the founding fathers of this country, but there's a couple of components of the proposal that are not realistic, such as the part-time legislature and recent comments of Texas laws. The $600 stipend is not just unrealistic, it ensures that only the wealthy would be elected to positions. I would like to ensure a fair process. I represent Main Street suffrage movement, and as such, I ask the board that Main Street suffrage movement representative be appointed to the Constitutional Committee that oversees the secession, and I ask that the proposal be modified accordingly. But the
Mr. Rush, can you conclude? Maybe you can tell us.
Let me summarize by this.
Which founding father are you a descendant of?
Actually, descendant of a cousin of Dr. Benjamin Rush. I've looked into a preliminary budget for the new state based on the counties that have been proposed to secede, and there would actually be a surplus of $6.1 billion simply because of we have a higher incidence of sales tax revenue than the northern counties. And I would like to, I will email the board and the clerk those figures as well as modifications to the proposal.
Okay. Thanks for your testimony.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. You're coming down. Anyone else wish to speak, address the board on this issue? Okay, seeing no one, then we'll come back to our board for comments. I don't know, Supervisor Benoit, Supervisor Ashley, any comments at this point? Supervisor Benoit?
Well, it's a very interesting proposal that's generated a great deal of interest, obviously, and I commend my colleague for doing that. I also understand his frustrations from a perspective that I've been blessed to have the opportunity to be in many interesting positions, including the legislature of this fine state, and many frustrating days in Sacramento, many times making arguments about the same issues that you articulated so well earlier that are plaguing the governance of this state. There's no question that your frustration is shared by very, very many, including myself, particularly as it addresses the current problems with the four cities, as we've talked about earlier today. I mean, a glaring unfairness there beyond anything I've seen in even my time in the legislature, and hopefully inadvertent and hopefully resolved, but clearly indicative of problems that are going on in the extremely partisan world that is Sacramento politics. And we have many friends here that spoke to that issue, and I agree with Mr. McAllister, many others, and that it came up. Friends of mine, I represented it at various times during my legislative career. Notwithstanding all of that and sharing those frustrations and commending you for initiating the discussion that I think is very worthy, it's a revolutionary idea. And when I first heard of it and spent a little time thinking about it, I was brought back to 1969, I think it was, in Mr. Jolly's political science class at Notre Dame High School. And Mr. Jolly was a very, very old man. I think he was in his 60s. Or so he appeared to us in the class, anyway. A lot of, smarts, he'd been around a lot. He wasn't a cleric. Many of our teachers were, but he was a businessman who'd been around a long time. And he taught us a political science class, and one of the things I remember clearly, that he came in one day and it was a 2-day block set aside for the discussion of when is a revolution morally justified. And we spent a good deal of time talking about that, and we opined and he guided and we opined some more. And at the end of 2 days, he made a statement that I thought has stuck with me, as few do in your high school years, but he made a statement, a revolution is morally justified when it has a reasonable chance of success. And we've seen revolutions in our time. We saw the American Revolution that obviously succeeded, that we're all very proud that we are, the experiment in democracy that has resolved from that revolution. We've seen many others that have failed, and lots of bloodshed and lives lost. This is not a bloodshed, lives-losing event, but it is revolutionary thought. It is, at its base, a secession movement. And so you have to analyze to determine whether it's morally justified, the chances of success. And in looking at that, someone has recently offered up the suggestion that there have been 220 plus efforts to divide the state of California since its initial, and of the 220, none have succeeded. That gives us, maybe not a final answer, but a pretty good idea about the chance of success of the basics of the proposal. And to do that, then while we're not going to have the kind of trauma that a real revolution has, it will have a cost. And the cost in this case would be borne by the executive office and our county council and county resources that are extremely scarce right now. In Riverside County, the executive office in the last 4 years has had its budget cut by 52%. The county council, that does very important work for us on a lot of fronts, and you're well aware of this, has had its budget reduced by 35%. Other resources are equally scarce in the county of Riverside today, and I heard you say that you're looking for sponsorship and that you'd like to see no taxpayer support, and I was pleased to hear that. But obviously the proposal as drafted would have Riverside County taking the lead, and therefore that would involve a good deal of county time and resources to carry this forward. I'm not opposed to the idea that change needs to be made. I just can't in good conscience commit Riverside County resources as a primary promoter of the concept. We have far too many critical issues to handle on our own plates and in these offices that we struggle with together all the time, and you're well aware of those things. So while I fully understand and commiserate with your frustration and some of the comments made about ways to achieve change that's short of a secession movement that need to be followed, I cannot support the fact the placing Riverside County or its resources in a position to try and further that at this time. Other resources, the large group of support that you've garnered here, maybe you can meld that into some form or fashion of a way to carry this idea forward, and I commend you for thinking outside the box and doing that, but I won't be able to support the motion as it's before us today. Thank you.
Supervisor Ashley.
Thank you, Supervisor. Thank you, Chairman Buster. I have some comments before I do that. I want to tell you, I went out and you saw these emails that come in. They're overwhelmingly support. I've been out, asking people in my district what they think, and believe it or not, they all have a good laugh, and then they talk about it and they say, I would support the idea of having 2 or more states in California. One group, I had a very large cross section of community leaders, business people, government leaders. We were in one forum, and I was telling about what was going on in the county, and then I mentioned that we were going to be discussing this today, and we're going to be discussing South California. And they laughed, and then we talked about it a little bit, and then I said, we have all these problems. We have how are we going to divide up the water? We have all these things, and those, those, believe it or not, no matter how tough they are, you could work those out with something like the Port Authority they have in New York and New Jersey on the harbors, and every problem can be worked out, and all that sort of thing. And then I said, okay, after we talk about how many would favor 2 or 3, at least 2 or 3 states out of what California is now, hold up your hand. And strong number held, almost, everybody held up their hand. And I says, well, how many would not, in no circumstance, you do not want to separate the state of California? And of that, there was a very small number held up their hand. It was about 6 to 1. There was probably, of that group, and there was about, I'd say, between 50 and 60 people there, but I counted 33 held up their hands in favor of statehood, 5 said leave California like it is, and there's about 10 or 12, the rest there's just weren't going to, commit themselves one way or the other. They were non-committal or just didn't want to be singled out. So, this idea is resonating, but, and this is, like Supervisor Benoit said, this is not a new idea. In 1993, Assemblyman Stan Statham, is a Republican legislator from Reading, introduced Assembly Bill 3, which would have required the state of California to submit an advisory question to the voters as of November 8, 1994 statewide general election that would ask whether the legislature should draft a plan to divide California into 3 states. The bill left the Assembly on a 68-0 vote in favor, but was killed by the Senate Rules Committee. There's a couple of authors, political journalists. One, they're both veterans. One's really been around a long time. I think Joe Matthews. This is Joe Matthews and Mark Paul. They wrote the best-selling book called California Crack-Up, which they've been featured speakers at both CSAC and the League of Cities, and have recognized the dysfunction of the size of the state, and have outlined why and how it happened to our Golden State. And they have like 5 secrets to this, so I'll read them, the 5. The number, they go them in reverse order. Number 5, going downward, California's government has never quite worked. California's Constitution had no framers, and the state had no founding fathers. For its entire history, it has relied on a series of improvisations, each one piling new unintended consequences on the last. And 4, Proposition 13, the 1978 Jarvis-Gannon Initiative did more than reduce property taxes. It created a new operating system for the state. It centralized decision-making in Sacramento, a long-held goal of liberals, and helped public employee unions to increase their power in local government. 3, California has the world's most powerful and inflexible system of direct democracy. It's the only place on the planet where a law passed via ballot initiative cannot be amended or changed by the legislative body without another vote of the people. The power to circumvent legislative and executive accountability completely is one reason why California's system is dysfunctional and why budgets never seem to balance. 2, for its entire history, California has been a state of arrival with the majority of its electorate and workforce born and raised somewhere else. But it will soon have what it's never had before, California's first homegrown majority. A state that has relied on new arrivals to bail it out will have to rise or fall with the citizens it produces itself. And last, number 1, California does not have one governing system. It has 3 systems. These 3 systems are at war with each other. An election system designed to produce governing majorities, a consensus-based legislative system that amounts to minority rule, and an inflexible system of direct democracy that trumps the first 2 systems. California doesn't work because it can't work. And these gentlemen, believe it or not, they have a movement going, and they're going to be hosting an event in Fresno in November to discuss separatism and dividing the state into manageable size. So there's something already going on there. So I don't think we should discourage Supervisor Stone, that we should let him continue on, but we shouldn't be spending any county resources. I agree with Supervisor Benoit strongly on that, to put this meeting together. It's got to be done independently of county government. Take it and run with it, but you've got to do it independent of the county, any money here. So this is feelings on that, and I think that you should explore options and where and when and find an entity that maybe could help you coordinate the event without spending any public dollars. So,
Supervisor Stone, we both agree California is a great state. I think we ought to try to fix its problems before we break it apart. And I can understand your cry for a new state as an outburst of frustration over the current problems. And so long as it's not a ongoing platform to secede, I certainly would want to foster that discussion. And we are very limited on funds, so I know you understand that as well. There's a lot going on in this state, as Supervisor Ashley pointed out. They call the state an improvisation. And that's an interesting term. You know, it's a musical term, too, and that's what jazz is, for example. I like jazz. Jazz is a real interesting form of music. Sometimes it's real discordant. Sometimes you don't know quite what's going on. Sometimes everything doesn't mesh. But the total effect of improvisation, good music, as in California, with its dynamism that it's always had, is that it has this ongoing potential because of its growth and its beauty and its natural resources and its burgeoning people, all its diverse people, its wonderful history, its wonderful landscape. It still captures people's dreams and imaginations for the future. And because of that dynamism, it's been able to almost leap over all these problems, and I think it can leap over them again. I think it can be fixed. There's been a few things fixed already. I think they're on their way to being fixed. I mean, we talked about redistricting this morning. There's a citizens redistricting committee that's working on things, so hopefully won't have the same gerrymandering, and you'll get more competitive elections, more folks truly representing their communities. You have an open primary system now. We haven't had that before. That's just on the election side. You have some real changes in what's going on in Sacramento with the passage of budgets now. And the state has had a problem with its constitution, and there needs to be a lot of fixes there. So I hope this kind of discussion can lead to that kind of a bigger reforms of our state constitution that are necessary. And no less an astute observer of California than Kerry McWilliams remarked that the state has a penchant for peerless remedies for present evils. And I think the call for secession is a kind of falls in that vein. And I was glad to hear the last speaker saying he had a direct connection through lineage to our founding fathers, because if you read Federalist Papers number 58, written by James Madison and Alexander Hamilton, where they discuss what's the right size for Congress, should there be supermajority votes required for various things, what should a quorum be, they remark that where you do have honest requirements for passing bills, such as we have here in California for some of our measures, and where gridlock can ensue, such as we have here in California today and for some years past, that this can facilitate and foster the baneful practice of secessions, a practice which has shown itself even in states where a majority only is required for passage of legislation. A practice subversive of all the principles of order and regular government, a practice which leads more directly to public convulsions and the ruin of popular governments than any other which has yet been displayed among us. I think those are prescient words. I think they're far-sighted words. I hope we have a kind of constructive discussion that you can lead, Supervisor Stone. I see a motion, if it hasn't been amended, item 3.3 still contains the idea of de-annexation. If that can be changed, I can certainly support your motion.
Let me ask you, Supervisor Buster, and I respect all of your opinions, and I'm certainly of the consensus here that we don't want to spend taxpayer money. I believe that I can raise the money through private sector sources to orchestrate this historic meeting. I believe that we have a nonprofit in the county that we can put those funds in. I don't think that the board would object to utilizing the executive office as long as their time is paid for by this fund that is contributed by sponsors. I hope that we're all in agreement on that. So what I would like to do is I'd like to make the motion that we let my office lead the effort to invite every city in the state of California, preferably their mayor, every county in the state of California, preferably their chairman, not excluding other council members or board members if they want to show, to a local government summit to address two things. Number one, to have as the primary goal to fix the state of California via a constitutional convention or through the initiative process that would garner the consensus of all those in attendance. But I would like to still have on the agenda at least just a discussion of secession in the event that there cannot be a consensus made and there is an overwhelming consensus of those participating, the secession should be explored further. So it's not endorsing it, and it's using it as a backdrop to any lack of progress that could be made in doing our first priority in fixing the state. So no public resources. My office will lead the effort. Executive office or any other groups in the county that are helping facilitate this meeting will be reimbursed through the funds that I'll generate. And we'll seek to have this in September or October. And let's see where the public process and our First Amendment rights will take us. I believe that only something positive is going to come out of this. I think not investing in this meeting is penny wise and dollar foolish. Or we can sit back and just again wait till next year and see what the state creatively is going to do to our local resources to further impact our budgets and further eliminate our ability to provide services. So if we have a consensus there, I'd like to make that motion. Is that okay?
All right, we have a motion on the floor. We have a second.
I'd just like to, before we finish the motion here, is still that it shows we're still using government dollars. If you're using your staff and all that, I like the idea of using a nonprofit. There's probably several out there that would pick this up. I would really, I don't think we should use county resources of any kind. I mean, whether it's your staff or our council or CEO, I think we ought to rely on these. This ought to be staffed on the outside. There are several nonprofit organizations in the Inland Empire that might undertake this and would be suitable. And I think that it ought to be done there, and that's fine. But we shouldn't, you shouldn't have your staff out there doing that, and when maybe it should be out in Anza or Idlewild or wherever. So I think I'll support you, but
I'll amend my motion.
Keep
no public funds to be used.
Yes,
entirely.
Okay, do that. Okay, I'll second your motion.
So moved.
Any further comment? Supervisor Benoit.
Who's going to monitor it?
The level of frustration is well justified, and exploring alternatives and expressing that frustration by at least having that discussion is well justified. And I leave it to you and the whatever nonprofit or the outside group that comes along whether or not the secession becomes a serious proposal. Again, I would encourage that you look at more realistic proposals and opportunities to make change.
That is going to be the focus of the summit.
But given the changed motion and the fact that it's basically a affirmation of the frustration and an opportunity to explore other options, not using government resources, I will be in support of the motion.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, good. Please vote on the revised motion. And the motion carries for voting aye, no nays.